Hello, Smarter Chart. This is Ross giving you a update lesson on how to use variables. When you use variables, it means you're surrounding a small section of a phrase with some type of variable character. This is the characters that I like to use. Before I tell you exactly how to set up these variables, let me take just a second and explain how you use them. So here I have my standard decision making for syncope. And as you can see, this is sort of a long process. And some of these processes I'll use and some of them I won't. When I'm using this, what I do is I start at the top and I work my way through. So I turn on the microphone and I say, next variable. When I say that, it selects all the text that's in between the two variables. Now let's assume for a second that I'm using this and all of this is correct. Say I've got a person that's in their 25 years old, they've got a long-standing history of fainting. This doesn't really surprise me. And then what I would do is I would go to the next variable. And then once I've got the whole process down, I can get rid of all of these brackets. Now if I say I'm going to do a CT scan, and that's going to be my default, that's great, but if not, I'll just chart over it. No suggestion, gross neurological changes implying a need for CT scan, period. And then I move on to my next field. So there's some other processes that are going on. And then once I've done with this, and I want to get rid of all these brackets, I'm going to say accept defaults. And then all the brackets go away. Then I leave this here. So basically anything that I've left here, in other words, this section, stays in the chart. This part that I overwrote stays as I've now overwritten it. So I've got that original charting where I want it, and I can change the things that I don't want. So we'll talk a little bit more when we're building our charts about things that you want as your defaults and then things that you don't. So some places that you can change this or make some change settings on this is under options. So when you start with commands, you'll see down here, there's a variable delimiter. Now the default comes like this. The reason I don't like to keep that bracket is some computer systems use that in their locked phrases. In other words, Epic will use the name of the medication. And then it'll be stuck there in the variable. You won't be able to get rid of all the brackets unless you do some fancy footwork. So you can use this. You can use basically anything. You could use 8 at 8 or anything along those lines. But basically whatever you put in between those two brackets is what's going to stay. I do like this. It's pretty elegant. It's pretty neat. And you can use it. And then just make sure that you hit your apply button once you're there. Now I talked about using the command, which is next variable. There's a couple different places that you can program that from. These are called the hotkeys. Again, it's under the options section. And the next variable can also be called next field. So what you want to do is hit edit. And then in this bracket, you can see I've used Alt and then the ellipsis key, the key that is the hypotheses, but you can, I've used this, but you can also use any other combination of keys. Again, I recommend that it's not something that's commonly used. For example, Control-C is usually used for copy, so you don't want to put that in there. You can't just use a straight thing like a tab. In fact, that just goes over here to your OK key. But Control and then the little figure or Control, let's see, what would be another good option? So Alt-O might be a good option for you. You could also use something along the lines of, but for right now, let's just keep it as Alt and then that bracket. So I'm going to hit OK. One other place that you can edit this is from a power microphone. And we'll talk more about this when we're doing other things, but you can see when I hit this here, that's considered the transcribe button, but I've set it as an auto to next field. So that you'll find under navigation, and it'll say next field. If you prefer, you can come up with a key that's going to go backwards as well. Sometimes you can see what I've listed here. And then I'll put something like accept defaults here. Now, when you're putting in accept defaults, it's not as easy. And in that situation, you're going to want to put accept defaults. Now, if you've just picked up your microphone and said accept defaults, it'll be here in the selection list. But if not, you're going to want to hit specify. And let's change this to accept and defaults. Again, it's my obsessive nature that's kicking in. We hit OK, and then apply. Then you can go back and use your shortcuts. Now, even without saying next variable, I can hit my Alt key and go to the next field. So let's see how that would look otherwise. I'm going to first put in my command, which is syncope medical decision. You can see this comes up again. Now, instead of saying next variable, I'm just going to be pushing a button. Let's say I delete this. Let's say I delete this just because it's not something that I want to use. And then I will say, we'll proceed to MRI, comma, given the timing and the patient's age. And then instead of having to say next variable, at this point I can just hit one of my buttons and it comes up with accept defaults. You can even see that there's this little yellow box that comes up down at the bottom. Well, that's it for this topic, Smarter Chart. I will talk to you guys soon. Have a good day.